Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome back to episode 108.
Ooh.
Yeah, we are going to be joined by a special guest in a few minutes to talk about Bitcoin and its infamousy, I guess is the nicest way to put it. And
Digital money.
Yeah, we're going to talk to an actual financial investor about whether Bitcoin is worth the financial investment or not. And I normally we kind of try and mix the episodes up. We've done a couple of all one topic episodes, and this one, well, my interview with Phil kind of goes a little bit longer. So we decided to make the whole thing Phil Ferguson of Polaris Financials. All links are in the description. And him and I got on going on Bitcoin, and we actually talked about our 107 episode and how that kind of related to taxes and financial investments of taxes, which is something Hanna and I didn't cover, though he did congratulate you on the capital gains discussion that you brought up during the show. So kudos to you, Mr. Hanna.
Yeah.
And, so we just kind of went through that, but I felt the Bitcoin thing was a big enough topic to talk about. And I only say this because there's people at work now coming up to me asking if I'm investing in Bitcoin. And it's like,
wait, like how old are these people? That's my question.
They're my age or 10 to 20 years older.
Really?
Yeah.
I figured it would be like the really older people that are just like, are you a kid that's putting your money in that digital nonsense? Or I've known about Bitcoin for years, and I've known that there have been these people that when it first started out, right now I know there is a hard drive in a Liverpool or London trash pile, whatever, that's got like thousands of Bitcoins on it. Like one of the guys who started it, or one of the early investors, bought like a 10,000 of these things for $100 or something crazy, and then eventually just threw his hard drive away. And it's down there somewhere with millions of dollars on it.
Whether or not the hard drive, we need to go right now.
Well, it's whether or not the hard drive, because if you think about it, if it gets wet or if it's in like nasty, garbagey, wet leachate, I think that's what they called it, then it's garbage. But like the thing is that there's a bunch of stuff like that. So I've known about these like wild Bitcoin stories, and I personally have never really trusted it, mostly because I'm not a hacker and I don't know how to keep other hackers from hacking my crap. And so if I put it online, or if I'm connected to the internet with all my money in a box that doesn't have any kind of protections like the Federal Reserve backing, then I'm terrified that someone's just going to come in and take all my stuff, which happened. Like something like $70 million was stolen last week in Bitcoin online from people.
Yeah, and we actually get into we get into a little bit of the mechanics of that. We talk about not as much of the security side as I would like to, right? There is a security side that we could talk about, but the big thing is it a sound investment? If not, why? Forbes did an actual big analysis on some of the big lies.
Okay,
that have to do with it, and so we referenced a lot of that material in our discussion. And Phil moves very fast. It was an amazing discussion, and I think everybody will enjoy it. Before we get too far, though, into that, it was kind of funny because there's a part of the conversation, and for those of you who are Patreon fans, there is a private, I don't know, probably 10 to 15 minutes after show where Phil and I talked about whiskey. We talked about his dislike for Scotch. But we also talk a little bit on the show about it. And while we're doing it, I'm trying to Google to find something that maybe he would like, right? Maybe we'll send him a little Christmas gift or something like that. And while I'm doing it, randomly what comes up, Hanna, and this is the most amazing thing, and I haven't told you about this yet, but the most amazing thing
finding things.
Yes, it comes up with something that you could buy Cellar Door Skeptics for Christmas if you would like, and we would greatly enjoy it. Hint, hint. It's called the Scotch Whiskey Advent Calendar 2017 edition.
Oh, man.
You get 24 doors
How
of
big
a
is this
different
thing?
kind of a 3CL bottle full of scotch. It's amazing. I mean, I literally don't know what else to do. Like right now, I just want to click the add to basket, send to my door. Like right now, I'm just sitting here going, I hate Christmas. Like the Christian side of it, where I used to have to do Advent, I hated that because we had to read a Bible verse. We had to talk through what it meant and what was coming up every year. My parents religiously, I guess it's a bad word, but you know, they did it every year. We had an Advent calendar.
I never had the Advent calendar because I kind of had the Jewish version of it with the 8
Hanukkah
days. Yeah, but like we were like lighting candles and it wasn't very interesting. I had to do the prayer because my mom liked that. But like for Christmas, it was just a one and done. You know, just like the American binge, and we never had that. But I've seen some of the chocolate whiskey Advent calendars. Those are pretty cool. I've had some of that whiskey candy. That stuff's pretty good. So these are just the centiliter bottles. So like people call them the hotel minis. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, or a little bit smaller. And it's all of good scotch.
Good stuff.
Yes, not like bottom end stuff. It's not cheap either though. So I'm not honestly advocating anybody buy this, but it's like $166. But
oh, geez.
But yeah, you got to think about that. You know, I mean, you're talking, it's not bottom end scotch. You got to figure some of the stuff that was in here. Now, they don't talk specifically about exactly what's in it.
It's supposed to be a surprise,
but they do kind of. They give you like an overview. Like, for example, they have Glenfiddich Experimental Series IPA cast finish. I don't even know if you can buy that bottle. Like, I don't even know if you can buy that bottle of scotch anywhere. I just don't know if you can.
I'm sure you can, but I don't think you're allowed into those clubs. I don't know if you have, I don't think your haircut is good enough. I don't think your suit has a high enough thread count. But anyways, did you guys talk about that Advent calendar?
No, we didn't actually. I didn't find it when I found it afterwards when I was Googling through some different things. Then I kind of found it, and I kind of do wish I'll have to send it to them in an email. I'll have to like email Phil and be like, if you want to donate to Cellar Door Skeptics, please send this over our way. We will heavily enjoy this. But I did tell him I'll have to have him back on so that we could talk about finer liquors. And he said he can talk about fancy tequilas with us. So
that's cool. I don't know. It sounds like it'd be a fun conversation. It'd be great for the Patreons. You want to hear some drooling over some fine spirits.
Either which way. We have a great interview lined up for you. Stick around and you'll be able to hear all of my conversation with Phil. And if you want to hear the excess of the conversation, go over to Patreon, become a subscriber for $1 an episode, and you'll be able to hear more of the behind the scenes stuff. We'll be right back with my interview with Phil Ferguson of Polaris Financial.
Hey, this is Keith.
And this is Jen, and we're from Not Another Atheist Podcast.
You're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Join the revolution.
If you'd like to join the ranks of Patreons and sponsor the show, head over to patreon.com/Cellar Door Skeptics. For less than a 20-ounce soda or an energy drink each week, you can help sponsor us, the hosts, and our charity of choice. Patreon helps Cellar Door Skeptics create better content, become better activists, and it's going to help you stay healthier by drinking one less soda or one less energy drink each week. Click the link in the notes of the show to sponsor us today because we bring the discussion with the sources.
Hello, I'm Miss B. Haven.
I'm Demanda Wright.
And we're
promoting secular feminism. And you're listening to Cellar Door Skeptics.
Now, back to the show.
So, I brought you on, Phil, specifically to talk about Bitcoin. You know, for those of the listeners of the show who don't know who Phil Ferguson is, you run your own podcast, blog, and you have your own financial planning services called Polaris, I believe.
Yeah, I just say I don't really blog anymore, but used to do that. My business is Polaris Financial Planning. You can go to polarisfinancialplanning.com. Not that there's anything meaningful there. I mean, there are a few posts there, but I really don't do that anymore because no one has ever found my webpage, looked at a few stories that I wrote, then called me up and said, "Hey, I want to hire you." So it's a complete, it's verbal masturbation really to type anything there. So all it really serves is someone might meet me in person or hear me on my podcast, and they do what they consider due diligence, and they look, they go, "Does he have a website?" Yep, he's got a website.
He's legitimate now.
He's legitimate. Yeah, and but the podcast is the shit that is the Phil Ferguson Show. Available on all good podcast platforms. Yes. And of course you can subscribe. And I do one thing that I don't do Patreon because I'm a shameless self-promotional whore and the podcast makes me money just because people hire me. So I don't collect donations on top of it, but I do actually tithe 10% of my company's gross revenue, not net, mind you. Goes to charity causes in the secular movement. So, for example, a few months ago, I had a $3,000 match for American Atheists, and they were kind enough to make me a custom link, and I would send my listeners there. And once they donated $3,000, I matched $3,000. So it's kind of a way of giving back.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice to see the philanthropy in the secular community because sometimes we all talk about how we leave church and what is the one thing that people lose. You lose that community building, but you also lose what do you do with your money when that happens.
I got all kinds of ideas what you can do with your money. And I'll tell you what you shouldn't do with your money.
Bitcoin?
Oh, my God. It's like you're fucking psychic.
Well, I saw you post a couple of times on Facebook about it. And my friend got into Bitcoin, I don't know, like 2 years ago, whenever it first came out. And he was actually mining some of it before it became super problematic and environmentally disastrous to mine Bitcoin. But we can get into that later too. Indeed. But so my introduction to Bitcoin was 2 years ago, but I never thought anything of it because it just sounded like a bunch of work to me. And he didn't seem to be making more than $500 a year, so that kind of seemed like a waste of my time, to do that.
Well, the one thing I will take a position on, first of all, I'm going to disavow being an expert on how Bitcoin works. So if that's your real wheelhouse and the listeners really, really know more than me, that won't take a whole lot. They might be bothered by that, so we have that. But I will say that I don't think Bitcoin qualifies as a currency or an investment.
Wow.
I know, right?
That's compared to what the articles you read right now that says, hey, use this link and buy a bunch of Bitcoin. That's pretty controversial, man.
Well, you can buy them just like you can buy a lottery ticket. And you win $500 in your state lottery. You can say, I put in $5 and I got $500 out. Personal experience is not data. That's a thing we use in skepticism. But it would be true that you put in $5 and you got $500 back. That doesn't mean it's investing. It means that you put in $5 and you got $500 back. So I'm kind of rigorous about what the definition of investing is. And I was just on another show a couple of days ago, and I said, so Phil, what is investing? I think investing is taking your money and putting it in something that you think has greater value than what you can justify its price, and you buy it hoping to sell it for a higher price later. Bitcoin, and this is my opinion, and I think it's sound, Bitcoin does not have an intrinsic value.
Ooh.
Just like gold generally doesn't have an intrinsic value. I mean, you could argue that for some electronics, you might need gold or gold connectors or gold circuitry or gold molecules to make something. Okay, now it has an intrinsic value, but it's really low. It's not $1,200 an ounce. And does Bitcoin have any intrinsic value? I say no. Does blockchain technology have value? Fuck yeah. Does the internet have value? Sure, but it doesn't mean that Fox News on the internet has value. Maybe. So if we as a collective group decide that Bitcoin is not valuable, then it's not valuable. So there's no intrinsic floor holding it there. Just yesterday, I was just fascinated by this because I keep putting these links up and concerns and problems with Bitcoin. So I'm getting a lot of feedback, and I'm getting a lot of commentary from people that I know personally, that I know that are very intelligent people, that are making logical fallacy arguments that they would mock Christians for making. As an example, I had someone tell me that the reason I don't like Bitcoin is because I don't understand it. And a few minutes later, someone said that Bitcoin is a currency by definition because everyone understands it.
That's ridiculous.
Well, clearly everyone doesn't understand it because it's fucking complicated. Okay, maybe if you really know it, it seems easy to you. But the idea that I don't like it because I don't understand it, I sent this person a link to a book called The Emperor's New Clothes. That was the same line that they said, well, if you were smart enough, you would see the magical clothes. So you have to admit that you're stupid to not understand Bitcoin.
It sounds like who's the William Lane Craig? That sounds like an argument from him. That's literally what I'm hearing.
And a lot of these things, it's staggering. I see these arguments, and if you change a few words and you put Jesus and God or the Holy Spirit or something in the words instead of Bitcoin, it's the same fucking argument. And these are people that, like I said, are very smart people I know personally that would never accept this argument with skeptics, or I'm sorry, with psychics or homeopathy or religion, but yet they'll make the exact same arguments, the same structure for Bitcoin to justify something that they've really just decided they're going to do. So, the one is like, someone says, well, tell me about your God. Well, he talks to me. I have a personal relationship with him. Okay. But that's not evidence. Personal testimony is not evidence. The fact that you bought something and then later it's worth more is not proof that it's an investment. It's proof that you made money. Sure, you made money. Will you make money going forward? Is it an investment? There have been some stories now of companies that used to take Bitcoins as a form of payment that are now not taking Bitcoins as a form of payment because the incredible rapid fluctuations in the prices of Bitcoin makes it hard for them to process and even know what they're selling their products for.
So is that like kind of the difference between the standard, let's say, behind real money and Bitcoin per se? Is because
it's funny. I'm not sure I'm not gonna be happy with the word real money.
Well, as close to real money as you can get. How about that?
Yeah. It's funny because whenever I get emails all the time about anything investing and tax purposes, like you had a show about taxes, we could delve into that at some point if you want to have some fun. But when I get an email from someone that says, Phil, what do you think about fiat currency? I know that we're going to have a problem because most human beings don't ask me about fiat currency. And what it means to be a fiat currency is that, like the United States of America prints $1. In the United States of America, by the power of the government, by fiat, by federal proclamation, declares that $1 is worth $1. That's what a fiat currency is. And they say, well, I don't want that. I want it to be based on something that's tangible, like gold. Well, that's nice. But when the United States was on the gold standard, and then it left it, and then it went on it again, the government decides arbitrarily how many dollars an ounce of gold is worth. And so it creates a fixed exchange rate between dollars and gold. And so they're deciding how much gold to put against the dollar by fiat. So it's a gold-backed fiat currency. And then the people will say, well, you can't change it. Well, actually, they did. So at some point, the Congress had a vote and said it's now this much gold per dollar versus this much gold per dollar. They by vote changed how much gold you need to have $1. So it can be changed just like dollars can be changed. So that doesn't solve any problem. But Bitcoin, it's created through a system that rewards people who are solving mathematical equations, and they get harder and you have to do more of them. And I think it's every 10 minutes a block of Bitcoins, and an incredibly small fraction is randomly given to one of the participants in the last 10 minutes. And yay, I mined a Bitcoin. And so if you have a lot of computers and a lot of power processing, there was a story where this is getting so expensive to do that it can cost $1,200 to $1,500 to mine on average a Bitcoin, which as long as they're selling for $15,000, who gives a shit, right? But people are buying $5,000 and $8,000 and $10,000 computers. They had a guy that put in a computer rack system, a server farm basically, in his Tesla, and drove it in and plugged it in to get free electricity.
Jeez,
that's
extreme.
Server farm. Well, when things get crazy, people do extreme things because they actually now make sense. Just like you can buy a really nice computer for $2,000 or $3,000, but you can buy an even better one for $9,000. Well, who's buying that? Someone who wants to mine Bitcoins. So you're now doing things that are different than what you might normally do. And I was looking for the story. I posted something about if Bitcoin demand and prices stay where they are, people keep buying more and more powerful computers to mine the Bitcoins, there is a risk that within 6 to 12 months, the amount of electricity that will need to be used to continue to escalate this process will be more than the available energy that's left in the world.
That's crazy.
At some point, someone can't run their air conditioner or someone can't charge their car. That's a hard limit. I mean, you can only build coal factories so fast, since we're going back to clean coal, but without this change in the supply of electricity, we're going to have a hard limit on how much Bitcoin you can mine. And they're meant to be harder and harder to get to make them precious. But that's going to be a problem. How soon we get there, we're talking months away if things keep going the way that they are. And at some point, that can't continue. I had someone tell me that Bitcoin does have an intrinsic value. It's the cost to mine it. And I had to explain to them that is called the production cost. So if the production cost is $1,500, if the retail price is $1,200, almost everyone will stop mining, but the intrinsic value could still be zero. It's all supply and demand. I had another person tell me that while most people who are getting Bitcoins are buying them and holding them, there's no way that the price could collapse because they're not selling them. It shows a complete and grotesque lack of understanding of how trading systems work. In 1987, the U.S. stock market had the single largest one-day decline, and a lot of people had automated sell orders that, if the market went down 5 or 10% to sell. And so they said, well, I can only lose 10% because I'll sell them. And people are doing that with their Bitcoins. They're setting hard limits so they can only lose so much money. Well, when the market collapses, what happens is the Bitcoins can go from $1,700 to $1,300 to $1,100, and we've seen some of these $2,000 and $3,000 swings in a day. And it goes to $9,000 and $8,000 and $7,000, and each transaction sets that new price point. So your instruction for whoever's holding your coins or however that's set up by you says, okay, I want to go in there and sell, but so did everybody else.
and then there's no money left because it's not worth anything because nobody's holding it. And what are you going to do with the Bitcoin afterwards?
And it's called catching a falling knife is the phrase I've always heard when a stock does that. And so you can't sell because everybody else wants to sell. And if there's no one buying, if everyone gets spooked at the same time, the price just goes boom, 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 boom. And someone puts out an offer for $100 for a Bitcoin. If one person agrees to sell their Bitcoin for $100, that's the new official price. And you can go from $19,000 to $100 in a day. It could happen overnight. I don't know it's going to be that dramatic, but I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if Bitcoins at some point, and maybe I'm wrong about this whole fucking thing. You might get real emails about this. I will not be surprised at some point within a day or two, Bitcoin loses 90% of it or plus of its value. And, will it go up from there? Who knows? But it's something I'm not interested in putting my money in. Like I said, I don't consider it an investment. It's a whole new thing, and there's no history to back it up. I mean, even if you go to a racetrack, bet on horses, you can calculate the odds. If you go to a casino, you can calculate the odds. And people are often scared of that, but then they're okay with Bitcoin. So I don't know.
So this is kind of a little different. When the market crashed because of the housing market, and when everything crashed because of that, it was because people were selling all their bad investments on purpose, right? This almost feels like
it won't be a similar situation, but it almost could be, because one of the articles I was reading, people are taking out loans for this. Well, what happens when you take out a $500,000 loan for Bitcoin and then the market crashes? You're still left holding the bag. And if too many people take all these loans out, what's going to happen to the economy again?
So I'm going to back up a step when you said about the market crash and everybody was selling. In a market crash, you might only have 4 or 5% of all shares being transacted that day. It's not everybody selling. It's simply more people are selling than are buying.
Okay.
And so if I have a stock that's worth $100 and I somehow desperately want to get rid of it, and I offer to sell it for 90 and no one buys it, and then I offer it for 80 and no one buys it, and I offer for 50 and no one buys it, and I offer it for 30 and someone finally buys it, the official price of that stock goes from $100 to $30, and it may be based on one transaction because no one else is selling. So the volume can be very, very thin. And matter of fact, today, the day that we're doing this, was the first day of futures on the Chicago Board of Exchange, futures for Bitcoins, which I think is just comically ridiculous that we're now guessing months into the future what the price of a Bitcoin might be. And people are buying and selling futures based on this thing. And pork bellies, at least at some point, you can make bacon out of it, and it's a food product. A lot of people have made the analogy, and I think it's a very fair one, of comparing this to the tulip bulb mania. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yep.
And the snarky way I say it is that the big difference is with the tulip bulb mania, you could plant it and eventually get a flower. So, like you said, what's the value of Bitcoin if the system goes down? And let's assume for a few months or a few years that I'm wrong. If people start getting paid by their employer in Bitcoin and people start buying cars in Bitcoin, one of the motivations, at least to people I've talked to do that, is to cut out the man, right? So the government can't know what I'm doing. That's one of the values of this currency. If the federal government finds that they're starting to lose even a few percentage points of the tax revenue that they're expecting to get because people are using Bitcoin, guess what happens?
They're going to start taxing it somehow.
They're going to shut that shit down. I mean, they're going to figure out a way to tax it, or they're going to figure out a way to shut it down. The other thing that could have a potential problem with, and I don't know if you've heard of this, is called the 51% problem.
No, what's that?
So with any blockchain transaction, there's hundreds, if not thousands, and not millions of computers and processors all checking and double checking all the transactions. And that's one of the selling points of a cryptocurrency, is that it is managed by everyone involved. And so your computer is constantly checking the transactions. So when coins move from one person to another, computers around the world are checking that and verifying with each other that this is what happened, and they agree, and they kind of like have a vote on did this coin go from person A to person B. If a single organization, let's say China, for example, controls 51% of the processing power in all transactions that are related to Bitcoin, they can start to manipulate the coins, and they can be used more than one time because they're saying, yes, these are valid Bitcoins, even though someone else already accepted them. And so the entire system could collapse overnight if that happens. And I can't remember which one, but one of the brokerage, I don't know if it's a brokerage, one of the companies that would hold Bitcoins for people several years ago actually did by itself achieve more than 51% of the market. And it spooked the entire Bitcoin world, and they agreed to go down to 40% and never go over 40%. Well, if they're hovering around 40%, how hard would it be for them, with the encouragement of the Chinese government, to go up 11 points to go to 51%? So when the distributed system votes on whether the coins went to you or not, they could vote that they did not go to you, but you know that you got them because you sent the goods. So you don't get the coins, but you sent out something in trade for the coins. And of course, you generally don't want to do that because you can devalue the entire system. But if a large portion of the American population starts putting value in these things, and you're Russia, and you want to disrupt our economic system, if you make Bitcoins worthless overnight, that sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's almost like because there's not, and we don't have insurance companies that guarantee our money yet. I mean, so you got to think about it. If well, how would you get your money back? What are you going to do? Call Progressive or Allstate or something and be like, yeah, hey, I need $500,000 back.
It's funny because some companies do claim to guarantee and insure the wallets or the locations that are holding your Bitcoins. Will that be valid if $1 billion in Bitcoins disappears overnight from a theft? I mean,
yeah.
who's going to pay? Who's going to pay out on that? It's not been tested yet. Whereas the money in your bank, if that disappears, your bank is on the hook. The bank has insurance. The federal government has insurance on their deposits. It might take a while. You might have to hire an attorney. You might have to do some paperwork, but you're probably going to get a good part to most of your money back. One of the perks with the cryptocurrency is that it's really hard to track who has what coin. So they just had a mining company. I don't know what else to call it, but
it's the new mining company. We got to get rid of coal, right? We're going to Bitcoin.
They lost, and I got my little air quotes up for the radio listener. They had stolen from them $70 million in Bitcoins.
Holy crap.
And so I know people who are personal friends that go, oh, yeah, sure, I lost $100 or $200 because they lost a fraction of a Bitcoin because you pay this mining company apparently, and I may get this mixed up in the detail, but you pay them something and they take your money and they buy server farms and they mine the coins for you and then they give them to you and they put them in an account with your name on it. And you have to go in there so often and move the money out from where they're holding it into another wallet. Well, if you didn't move it out fast enough, that's where it got stolen from. Now, are they going to cover you or are they not going to cover you? We don't know yet because they lost $70 million in one crack. And if Bitcoin goes up, does their obligation go up as well because they still haven't given you the Bitcoin yet? If Bitcoin falls to $1 a piece, can they cover you in the future at that lower amount? I mean, these are lawsuits waiting to happen, or a company just goes, fuck it, and they go bankrupt and they walk away. Well, what are you going to do? And that's where it leads to someone telling me, well, Phil, you just don't understand how the system works. You're not smart enough because it's up to you to control the money and have security and passwords and protect yourself. Well, okay, maybe that's all true, but I don't have to do that at TD Ameritrade. I don't have to do that at Citibank. I can be really sloppy and someone can hack into my bank account and I can probably get the most of my money back. But with Bitcoin, it's gone. So there's things with it, but it's just one of those things that I'm not interested in putting money into it. I'm convinced, I could be wrong, we'll find out in a few months probably, that it's a bubble. I'm convinced that it has no intrinsic value and that people are going to end up owning a lot of really high-end computers that they have no purpose for. So
Hey, hopefully one day they sell one to me at a really cheap price. Then it's got value to me then.
Yeah, maybe they will. I also thought it was amazing, that story with the person who modified their Tesla. It sounds like a really good way to fuck up your warranty.
Yeah.
You're putting a server farm in the back of your $60,000 car and driving it around. It just blows my mind but people will do that, and you're going to have countries that are going to have brownouts where the power demand exceeds the power production, and you're going to have problems. They've also had some occasions, and people have written stories about this, where someone says, okay, I now want to go sell my Bitcoins or my fractions of a Bitcoin. And they get kicked out and said, sorry, we have a high demand, check back. Well, they're not able to make these transactions while the coins are going up in price. When they drop in price, what's going to happen when a lot of people actually do want to sell? The system's not designed to handle it. Just like the stock market in 1987 and some other times, they now have a cooling down period where if the stock market falls more than a certain percentage, the whole system forcibly shuts down and you can't trade for 15, 30 minutes, and then it comes back on because it wants to give people a chance to go, wait, what, do you really want to sell everything? I mean, there's no such system set up for Bitcoin. So there's a lot of reasons for me to not like it, but I do have endless number of friends that say I've made a lot of money, and I don't deny that they've made a lot of money. The way I look at it, and it's funny because I've had to modify an example when I talk about investing, because historically what I've seen is people get excited about a stock when it goes up in price. And so if you go to the store and you look at a sweater and it's a $100 sweater, you might say, well, that's a really nice sweater, but it's $100. I don't have $100 right now. I don't know if I want to spend $100 on that sweater. Let me think about it. You end up back in that store a year later and that sweater is now $200. So of course you buy it. No one thinks that way. But when you look at a stock and it was $50 a share last year and it's $100 a share this year, it's exciting. You want to buy it now. So I have to modify my example that $100 sweater, you come back a year later and it's not $200, it's $15,000. And so now of course you want to buy the sweater. And of course a sweater actually does have an intrinsic value. It's usable as a sweater. But people are doing that with Bitcoin, and they're saying it was $1,000 before, or $500 before, or 10 years ago, even not even 10 years ago, 5-6 years ago, it was $3, and now it's $15,000, $16,000, $18,000, and we're talking swings in $2,000 and $3,000 over a period of a couple of days. A few days ago, it lost 35% of its value in 3 days. I mean, people would be flipping out if that happened in the stock market. I mean, it happened in 2008 over an entire year. It went down 37%. This was 3 days. It's absolutely stunning. That was one of the other arguments I heard someone make that said one of the nice things about something like Bitcoin is it would prevent the United States government from making bad policy that can result in market volatility. And as an example, encouraging people to get housing through Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, which was one of the things that led up to the 2008 housing market collapse. Well, 35% in 3 days is more volatile than the thing they're aiming to prevent. I watched another video where someone was an actual self-declared Bitcoin expert, and they said that there's over 900 cryptocurrencies available today.
Holy crap.
And the person that interviewed him said, well, how many of those are not good investments? And the guy said more than 800. And I'm thinking, I think the 900 number was what you should have used again. But companies are now coming to the conclusion that as long as they call something a cryptocurrency, someone's going to buy it and they can issue coins on their own system. Because there's nothing in law that I'm aware of that says Phil Ferguson can't issue Phil currency. And
I won $1,000 of that.
Yeah, they're $20 a unit. And there's a limited supply, and I make some rules, and people start mining them and buying them and trading them. Obviously, that's comical. That's ridiculous that I could be able to do that. But companies are now doing that because people will buy them. People will pay for them, and they think that what is that? The philosophy is called the greater fool. It doesn't matter what you pay for something as long as there's someone who's a bigger idiot than you that will pay you more for it at some point in the future. Well, Bitcoin has become so popular, which is what drives a bubble. Everybody and their brother wants to get into it. And I talk to people all day long, every day about investments. And now I have people coming to me and saying, how do I get some Bitcoins? And when people that know absolutely nothing about Bitcoins, like when your grandpa comes to you and says, hey, how do I get some Bitcoins? The end is near because you're running out of fools, right? So I don't know. We'll see what happens, I guess. I'm putting myself out there on the record that this is a bubble. We'll see what happens.
I would agree. So you wanted to talk a little bit about last week's episode. We kind of went into we called it the Robin Hood, a tale of two taxpayers. We kind of talked about how the GOP plan and how it works essentially over the 10 years and how it's going to affect you as an individual versus somebody that makes, let's say, over $500,000.
And I appreciated the attempt to simplify it. Of course, when you simplify it, you're only looking at the simplified scenario. Because one of the things that can be very dramatic, if, for example, if you live in California where a starter home is $1.2 million, you may pay a lot of money in interest on your mortgage. If that's no longer deductible, that's going to hurt someone in California in a way it's not going to hurt somebody in Michigan.
Yeah.
If you have 4 kids and you claim each one of them as a deduction on top of your own personal deduction, If those personal deductions go away, you still have the 4 kids, but you might get a $4,000 or $5,000 increase in your tax bill. So there was that. The other thing that really struck me as interesting was the discussion about Canada.
Yes.
And I just was like, that can't be right. The Canadian rates can't be lower. And so before I jump into some detail with that, because I'm not a Canadiophile or a Canadian expert or anything, I just used the Google. The published tax rates are one thing. So even if a country does have a lower published tax rate or a tax tier, it doesn't mean you actually pay that because of the complexities of deductions and allowances and all that stuff. But I did find out that in the United States, we have the federal tax. And then we also have state taxes, which some states are 0, and some of the higher ones are closer to 9 or 10. In Canada, each province has taxes on your income, and they're normally for the top tier people between 15 and 20%. And matter of fact, in Ontario, if you make over, I think this is, 4 or 5 million. So, I mean, you're way, way up in the top fraction. You can pay 56% to the province of Ontario before you pay the Canadian level taxes.
And see, that's interesting. I guess that didn't come up when we did the research.
You were probably looking at tiers for federal rates.
Yes.
And so that's one of the things that I have Republican friends who will complain that someone in the United States making $20,000, they're actually, let me see, what is the limit here for 2017? If you anything under $10,000, you're probably paying 10% tax on it, but there's deductions because like you're talking about the standard deduction, it might be $10,000 or $12,000. So you might make $10,000 and pay no federal tax. And then what will happen is they'll say, well, I'm sick and tired of someone making all that money. I can't even keep a straight face. $10,000. And they're not paying any taxes. And I go, okay, first of all, if the federal tax rate is 0, it doesn't mean they're not paying any taxes. Because if they live in New York, they might be paying 7 or 8% tax still on that money. If they buy groceries, they might be paying 10 or 12% tax on the groceries that they're buying. If they have an apartment or a house, even if it's an apartment, you're not technically directly paying property tax, but it's built into your rate. So you're paying property tax. If you make any money, you guys did mention this in the show, you're paying Social Security tax. And I think it's 7.65%. And then there's part paid by the employee and the employer. Did you know that has a cap, that you only pay that to a certain amount?
No, I didn't know there was a cap.
And I don't know what it is this year, but let's say it's $120,000. So if you have someone that makes $500,000, they pay the 7.65% on the first 120. The next 380,000 they make, they pay 0. So their effective rate is 1/4. So it is actually a regressive tax. So if you make 60,000, you're paying 7.65 and your employer's paying 7.65. But if I'm an executive making $500,000, I only pay it on 25% of my income or 20% of my income. So I'm not paying an effective 7% rate. I'm paying a 1.5%, 2% rate.
Yeah, which is, and it's kind of funny. I think I've had you on the show, I don't know, about a couple of years ago. We've talked through a little bit about where your thoughts are on not taxing corporations as heavily and taxing individuals a lot heavier. This would fix some of that, because if, in your case, what you're saying is if they're only paying that 2% and we changed it up, they would be paying a lot higher tax rate.
Yeah, I mean, there's always complications because, I mean, if you have a job through a conventional W-2 job where you're working for somebody, that employer is paying part of the FICA, the Social Security tax, and so are you. They're paying unemployment tax. They're paying workman's comp tax. They're paying all kinds of taxes that are often based on the amount of wages that they pay you, and that makes it harder for them to pay more. However, you get benefits from that. So if you lose your job, you can go collect unemployment tax. So I would like things just to be a simple number. Now, I do think people that make more income should pay higher rates. And I do think that corporations should pay 0. And for people that know me and know that I am so extremely liberal, that freaks them the fuck out when they hear that. But I have to beg your indulgence for a moment. There's caveats that go with that. I think people should pay the taxes. I don't think corporations should pay the taxes. But I also think that corporations should not be able to influence government at all. They shouldn't be able to hire people to go to D.C. They shouldn't be able to help write laws. The government is by the people and for the people. And the only way you can kick all the corporations out is to tell them you're not going to pay taxes. Otherwise, it's taxation without representation in their mind. If they're paying taxes, they want to be represented. Well, fuck them. They pay zero tax and they don't get the vote. If the people want to lower the amount of lead that can be in their neighborhood stream or in the public waterways for this country, the people should decide that, and the companies don't get a fucking voice. They just have to do what they're told to do. Now, when that company has money left over and it gives it out as distributions, or the intrinsic value, I don't know if I want to use the intrinsic value, the value of their shares goes up because they're sitting on this pile of money. If you then sell those shares, you should pay tax as the owner. If that money leaves the United States, like Apple has one of its international business locations is in Ireland. And so they're dodging hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in tax responsibilities to the United States because those are products being sold through the Ireland branch and they don't have to pay the United States. Well, you don't have to make them bring their office back. You just pass a law and say, if you don't pay the tax, I don't give a fuck where you classify it for. You sold it in the United States, you pay the goddamn tax on it. Yeah. That makes it real simple.
Yeah,
so
and those are some of the things we didn't even get into that side of it, to be honest with you.
And like I said, there's so many things that, we could spend another couple of hours talking about that, and a lot of it I'm just making up shit off the top of my head because it's not even my area of expertise. But I do like the idea of corporations paying no tax. And of course, the other thing that you guys did talk about on the show is the published tax rate for corporations may be higher in the United States than some countries, but the effective tax that corporations pay is often below 5%.
Yes.
Their published rate is 35%, but come on, they don't pay that. And one of the things in the tax bill was talking about companies that have pass-through income. So a company that has pass-through income may only pay 20% as an upper limit. So, there's all kinds of ways and caveats and what ifs. For example, if they get rid of the alternative minimum tax, someone that may have been forced to pay an effective rate of 24%, but with all their deductions, it was 12%, was forced to pay 24%. Now it goes down to 12%. So I think Mitt Romney, when he did his taxes, had an effective rate of something like 14, 15% a few years ago. Yeah. And people got really upset by that. And if that bothered them, Trump was smart enough to know not to release his taxes.
Yeah, nobody wanted to know exactly what he didn't have to pay.
Yeah, because aside from the obvious money laundering with Russia and other countries, he probably paid no taxes, and people would be bothered by that. So he just didn't make them public.
Yeah, and if you could just lie about it, right, and just tell everybody it's okay. I mean, and if they believe you, where's the intrinsic value in that?
That's the new way, and some politicians are paying the price for doing things they shouldn't have done, and they probably should. But other politicians are not paying the price for things they shouldn't have done. And I'm talking about sexual harassment, obviously. And it seems to be that if you are a Republican and or you're willing to just look at the camera and lie straight through your face, there's no consequence. And I'm afraid that it's setting up a pattern that we are going to reward people that lie to us. Whoa.
And it's kind of funny because, my friend's not political at all. He doesn't like politics. He votes in major elections. That's what he does. That's not his thing. And, today he came up to me and he asked a question. He heard the show and he kind of was like, so, you're upset about getting more money back. And I was like, well, no, I'm not personally upset myself about getting more money back. What I'm more upset with is what are we going to do to cut rates, for inside the federal government when they don't have this income coming in? And
go ahead.
He goes, well, how can any of these people even support Trump? He's like, I don't even understand why anybody would want that. And he's just like, it's above him. He's so far removed from that. But that's kind of the same thing. I was like, well, Trump can tell you with a straight face a lie, and then people want to believe him because of cognitive dissonance, because they don't want to get rid of the two-party standard, or because Trump said he's religious and they just want that religious side to it. They migrate towards it, whether it's true or not.
Well, it reminds me of when Obama and the Democrats voted to give tax rebates to people. I don't remember if it was $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000, but virtually every American was going to get this tax rebate. And that people were just driven to the edge of insanity, how evil that was. And apparently they could not make the connection that George Bush did the exact same thing 4 years earlier. and it's just bizarre because like as soon as Obama got elected, back when I worked for the man, I had in a cubicle, this person next to me was just belligerent about how Obama is running up the debt. And I said, well, have you ever thought about the national debt in the last 24, 30 years? No. Okay, well, why are you thinking about it now? Well, because Fox News, because Fox News made it an issue. So suddenly it became an issue for them. And of course, in 3 or 4 years ago, when a hurricane hit New Jersey and New York, the United States government almost passed $0 to help because we just don't have money in the budget. I'm sorry. If we have to spend money, we've got to cut money. Everything must be revenue neutral. We can't go further in debt. This debt is debilitating and killing us and crushing us. And once they have all the power, they're going to pass something that theoretically is going to cut the revenue of the United States government by $1.5 trillion. And they're okay with that. They haven't given a second thought about the fact that it has to be revenue neutral. Well, what the fuck just happened? And people who watch Fox News are told that this is going to stimulate the economy, and which is, of course, yet another lie. I mean, it's like Trump saying that he wasn't on the bus talking about grabbing the pussy. It just lying straight to your face over and over and over again, and people accept it. And I would wager that I'm going to get a bigger tax cut in terms of raw dollars than the vast majority of your listeners. And like your friend said, don't you want that money? And I'll take a bigger stand and I'll say, no, I don't fucking want that money because it's the wrong thing to do. And will I enjoy the money? Yeah, sure. Am I going to hire somebody with it? No. Why would I do that? I mean, will there be some companies that because of their specific circumstances might hire somebody because their tax gets cut? Of course. But the vast majority of companies, they hire people because there's a perceived demand to sell their products. Oh, yeah. If that demand does not go up, I'm not going to hire people to make more fucking widgets if I can't sell them. Well, that's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, and that's kind of, that was funny. I went in as a joke to my boss, and I kind of just said, hey, when am I getting my 15% increase? You guys are going to say 15% at the end of the year. I expect every one of the employees here to get a 15% increase instead of you guys put it in your pockets, even if it's only for 1 year.
And the beautiful thing, that's a lot of this stuff, if you just look at the federal tax brackets, that's one thing. When you look at the deductions, it's another thing. But if you look at how the average wealthy person, and we're talking 1%. Yeah, sure, the income is $500,000 from their job, maybe, but a lot of wealthy people, the vast majority of their income comes from appreciation of their assets, from investments. And you guys touched on this, which was beautiful. Thank you for doing that. But they're going to pay 20% capital gains. You're working hard, paying 28, 30% plus FICA, and if you have your own business, you're paying FICA fucking twice. Trust me, I know about that. Thankfully, it stops at 120. The rest of the money I make, I pay no FICA. You've got state taxes. You got all these things. But if I have a $4 million portfolio and it goes up 20%, and the last year the market went up 20% and make $800,000, I can pay very, very little tax on the dividends. The part that went up, I paid no tax until I sell something. And then when I do, I pay 20%. So not only can I avoid taxes for year after year after year, but I can get compound growth on my investments year after year after year with virtually no taxes. And then when I do sell something, I pay 20% on the gains. I don't pay any FICA. I may not even pay state, depending on the state rules. I don't pay workman's comp. I don't pay unemployment. I don't pay any of those taxes. I pay 20%, where an employee making a fraction of that amount of money might have a fully loaded federal and state tax structure closer to 25 to 40%. I'm paying 20, or that rich person's paying 20. Yep. I still have annual income, so I'm paying some of those higher rates, and I'm going to get a nice big decrease if it passes. I mean, it still hasn't really passed yet, but I don't know. I think they're going to come up with something. And then, of course, the idea is that if it does pass, and if it does cut revenue, Well, where the fuck does that money come from? And what you've already led to this, and this is a 50, 60-year-long philosophy of the Republican Party, which I will call starve the beast, because they can't get anyone to agree to cut services that go to the poor people. So they want to rack up the debt. This is intentional. They cut taxes, they cut revenue for the federal government, and then they can come back and go, well, you know what? That lady who's a single mom and has 3 kids and gets $85 a month for food stamps, we need to cut her off. She's a mooch on the system. What the fuck mindset do you have to think that that's okay? I don't understand. You guys talked about graduate students who get a stipend or an allowance. The university publishes, it's like a rack rate in a hotel. College says it's $60,000 a year to go there. Complete fiction, complete fantasy number. Almost
like
no one.
Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody pays that amount or anything close to it. And they can go, well, we're going to give you $35,000, $40,000 off. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And then we're going to give you a job and you're going to earn 15 from that. So you just got to pay us $3,000. Okay, whatever game you want to play, I'm only out $3,000. Well, now that allowance, that reduction in the artificial tuition price is going to be counted as income, and you're going to have to pay 25% on the $40,000 that you didn't get in an artificial price. So you've got to come up with $10,000 on a tax bill, and your income for that year is less than that. Well, it's crazy. Does it make it unaffordable for a lot of people? Yeah, fuck yeah, it does. But it's just another kick in the balls of our education system. It's just staggering to me. This money is not wasted. This money is invested. When we talk about healthcare, one of the reasons countries around the world have lower overall healthcare costs is because they do preventive medicine. So if you don't do preventive medicine, when someone gets sick, they finally get sick enough, they go in the hospital and they sit there for a day. They can't work. They can't work for a couple of days. They're so sick, and the hospital has to write it off. So it's not like there was a big benefit. The person didn't get a great deal or a savings on that. And then a hospital might hit them with a bill, and they have to file bankruptcy. It's just ridiculous. It's completely undermining the fabric of our society, and I guess no one seems to give a shit.
No, and I had that. When I first took my job, I didn't have insurance, and because it hadn't kicked in yet. You had your waiting period, and then I had what I thought was a heart attack. Come to find out, they claim it's just a panic attack mixed with high blood pressure. But at the time, I honestly thought I was having a heart attack. I've never once gone to the emergency room until that day, and I had to go be transported by ambulance. That was a $2,800 bill with no insurance. Now, luckily, I got lucky. Once my insurance kicked in, I was able to resubmit that bill. And thank God, thank Invisible God, they actually took it, and I actually got to take my insurance. It hit my deductible for the whole year instantaneously, and then I only had to owe just that little bit. But for somebody that's not in the same boat as me, who can't get that type of insurance, or who the government or the insurance company says, yeah, we're not going to do that, think about that bill that they have to pay. And it's outrageous to me. It is that anybody thinks this is a logical way to live.
I have some stomach issues, and I went in during calendar year 2017, which is almost over, sadly, so my deductible will start again. But the amount of tests that I had, my out-of-pocket was almost $6,000. And I look at that, and I can pay it. I'm not happy. I'm not happy about it, but I can pay it. What does someone do that makes $25,000 a year, that's barely getting by, do when they get a $6,000 bill that they didn't expect to have? They're not going to be able to fucking pay that. That's just,
it's insanity.
Yeah. So you want to talk about investments or something for a while?
Sure.
What would you like to talk about, or I can just make some shit up?
I was going to say, because I'll be honest, investments has never been my strong suit. We'll just put it that way.
Well, I tell you what, I'll start with a list of 3 books the listeners can read if they want to learn more about investing.
All right.
And so the first book, intentionally by design, is a very fun, lighthearted, simple book without a lot of math. And it's called The Richest Man in Babylon. It is an old enough book that it's out of copyright, so there's multiple people publishing it, and it's like $5.
And it's not made by Phil Ferguson? You didn't write the book?
It's not made by me. I do have to warn you, since this book came out in like the 1920s, it pretends to have ancient wisdom from the city of Babylon like 6,000 years ago, or what Christians would call 1,000 years before the earth was created. But it's cheesy as fuck. It is sexist because it was written, 90 years ago, 80 years ago, so only men could have money kind of thing. But if you get past that, it is very educational on why you should save money and why you should invest money and how investing works and how the money makes money for itself and becomes more and more over time. So for the beginner, if you just can't seem to figure out how to spend less than you make, and again, if you're making $25,000 or $30,000 in a big city like Detroit or Chicago, it's really going to be hard to save money. You might have to make some other life changes. But once you start making money, because I've had people come to me, a husband and wife team, that are making $200,000 and they can't pay their bills. Okay, that
seems a little silly to me, but
well, and it's even more funny when I tell you that they were living in an apartment above their mom's garage, paying $500 flat per month, room, board, and all utilities, and they still couldn't pay their bills, right? So that's the kind of person, or someone making even $40,000 or $50,000 that just can't seem to save any money. The Richest Man in Babylon is a fantastic book to kind of get you motivated and get you started. The second book is called A Random Walk Down Wall Street. It originally came out in 1974, and it is a really nice book that goes over a lot of things in the investing world. And, this is a stock, this is a bond, here's how mutual funds work, here's what an index fund is, and some of the theory behind it. And it gets into some of the details, and it has some math, but most people can read it either on Kindle or an audiobook, and they're going to get a lot out of it, and they're going to learn the buzzwords and be able to kind of keep up with the industry. The third book, and in this one I'm going to be very specific that you must buy it in hardback. Do not get it on Kindle, and do not get it on an audiobook. You need to see it in print. You need to sit down with it at your computer, and if you get to a word that you don't understand, look it up. Treat it as a textbook. And if you are already pretty sophisticated and know a lot of things about investments, maybe you can get through it in 2 to 3 months. I mean, this is not a Harry Potter book where you sit down over the weekend and read it. Right? You don't want to do that. It's not going to be valuable to you. But if you started with nothing and already read the first 2 books, plan to spend 6 to 9 to 12 months going through this book. Just read a few pages. Understand what's on those few pages, and then, spend 20, 30 minutes, come back to it in a few days. Do another section. It is filled with statistics and charts and tables and graphs and 200 years of data about stock market and bond returns in the United States of America and other countries and around the world. It is a very thick, heavy, deep book. So treat it that way. If you get the audiobook, and you could listen to it in 22 hours or whatever the audiobook is, but you're not going to get anything out of it. You're just not. But if you get 65, 70% of the content, and you understand that, even if it takes you a year or longer, you're going to outperform 95% of all other investors. And it's going to change your life. I call it my Bible.
Your Bible.
So, yeah, that's Common Sense on Mutual Funds, as written by John C. Bogle, Bogle. He is the founder of the Vanguard Mutual Fund Company. And I think it originally came out in 97. And then about 10 years later, there was a revised edition. So you want the newer one.
Yeah, they have an updated 10th anniversary edition, it looks like.
That's exactly right. And that's the one that you want. I mean, even the old one, if you got stupid cheap, but, are you looking at Amazon? It's probably like, what, $20?
Yeah, if you want to get it hardcover, it's $20, $27. And if you have Prime, it's free shipping. So
yeah, exactly. And it's one of those things. Now, me, I'm weird. I have the hardcover, the Kindle, and the audiobook. But because if I get between my Italian lessons and I want to hear some more about investing, I might listen to that for an hour if I've got a long drive. But I really do recommend getting it in paper, in hardback form, paying the $21 for crap's sake, and going through that and treating it like a textbook. On my show, which of course is the Phil Ferguson Show, most episodes we talk about investments and finance and money for a part of the show, and we talk about secularism, politics, atheism, and sometimes just randomly different topics because the show's got my name. I can do whatever the fuck I want. That's the magic of it. But I keep thinking I'm going to run out of crazy bullshit to tell people about and warn them about in the investment world. But so far it hasn't happened. I've been doing this for years. And I recently had someone came to me with a CD, a certificate of deposit, which you normally think of, at your bank, you're going to make 1%, 2%, maybe if you're lucky. And they keep the money for a fixed period of time. They give you a fixed rate of return. It's guaranteed by the bank, by the FDIC, safe and boring as fuck, but it's comfortable and you can make a few bucks. Well, someone brought to me a certificate of deposit that's linked to the stock market.
What?
I know, right?
How does that work? How is that even legal?
And so the beautiful thing about this is if the stock market goes down, you will not lose a dime. It's promised. If the stock market goes up, you won't get 100% of the return. You only get 75% of the point-to-point return, but your upside is unlimited, and you're going to get most of the upside. And if the market goes down, you can't lose a dime. I mean, what do you think? Sound pretty good?
I don't know.
You've listened to my show, obviously, so you know that you're waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, I know there's something bad. There's something coming. I just don't know what it is.
And so the first thing is you must hold this for 8 years.
Holy crap.
Right? So it's not like you can buy a 2-year CD and then a year and 4 months in, you go, I need that money. I want to sell it. Now, these things are tradable on the stock market. So
it's Bitcoin number 2.
Yeah. So you can trade it, but you're going to have to pay a brokerage commission. And, you're probably going to lose something on the transaction, on what they call the spread between what you're selling it for and what the other person's buying it for. But you can get out most of them, but some are less liquid or harder to trade than others. But so you might be stuck for 8 years. The other thing that if you look at the U.S. stock market in 8 calendar years at a time, since 1900 to 2016, 116 years, do you know how many times the U.S. stock market has been down over an 8 calendar year period?
I don't, but I'm going to guess at least once, if not twice.
It's once. You are right. It's amazing how many people get this right. So people know. So they're guaranteeing you against something that has a less than 1% probability of happening. So if you hold it for 8 years, they promise that you won't lose money. Well, that only happened one time. Now, what's going to happen in the future? I don't know. But they issue these all the time, so their risk is spread out. They're probably never going to pay this or cover it. And if they do, it's going to be very small. So like the best insurance, they're protecting you against something that's probably never going to happen. That's how insurance companies make a lot of money. Now, I said that you're going to get 75% of the upside of the point-to-point increase. Now, see, I was very sneaky in there, and I put in the word point-to-point. So if in an average year the stock market goes up 10%, and there is no such thing as an actual average year, but let's pretend. We live with Trump as the president. We can make up anything.
Like, exactly. I mean, for Christ's sake, he could just guarantee it will make you money, and it will.
That's right. In an average year, when the market goes up 8% is appreciation and 2% is dividends. Well, that 2% dividend, the bank gets to keep 100% of that. So you get 75% of the point-to-point increase, and all the dividends go in their pocket. Now, when you
sounds
read
like a scam.
When you read a 75-page prospectus, that's detailed in legalese somewhere in there, but you're not going to read it. Come on. Yeah, and the salesperson, they might not even know what the fuck they're selling. They have a script. They just read the script. You buy it. Everybody's happy, right? They make a nice, juicy commission. So the 2% that is current dividends in the U.S. stock market, they pocket that. And then the 8%, they get to keep 25% or 2 points of that. So they make 4 and you make 6 in every given year. And the only downside they have is to cover you for something that happens less than 1% of the time. But there's more. There's also an annual fee of 2.25% that you have to pay to be in this. So the end result is you're going to make 3.75 and the bank is going to make 6.25. So they make more money on your money than you make on your own personal money. Isn't that magical?
It sounds like they're saying, hey, give us money. We're going to make money on you for doing nothing but
it's just
nothing, actually.
We're going to hold your investments for you, and we're going to pay you out 3.75% on average, and we're going to pocket 6.75% on average per year. What a lovely deal. And, of course, when I explain it that way, it sounds like bullshit. But the sales pitch is custom designed to sound attractive, and they tell you things that are true, but they might leave out a few words.
It's like the original Trump. He told everybody he's going to do all these things. Hasn't done anything really yet.
Well, he drained the swamp.
Nope. No. Maybe. I don't know. Nah, not really. I mean, he got rid of Bannon's gone.
Is he?
But that's about as good as it gets.
I don't think he's gone. I think he's just standing in front of a mirror. You can't see him.
You never know. If we could open up the books behind what Trump pays everybody behind the scenes,
well,
that would be telltale.
I'm making predictions. So we have the Bitcoin bubble prediction. The other prediction is that Trump will eventually go down, and it's going to be for money laundering. That's where I'm putting my money laundering.
And that would be exciting. I mean, at least that would be something tangible that we could go after, compared to some of the other crap that, like the Russian thing. Yeah, there's ability to understand collusion, but at some point you can't demonstrate that exactly in the same way you could for money laundering.
So hopefully they get bank statements and tax documents, and they connect the dots. But we'll see. It might just he might just be around 3 more years. I don't know. And of course, if Trump gets pulled out and we get Pence, I'm not sure that's much better.
No, the difference is the crazy goes away. But as long as he hasn't passed any of the crazy, some of me says outside of the vision we have, outside of what we look like to the world, he's somewhat of a better deal than Pence. Pence is going to actually work within the system, which has not been something Trump has been able to do.
Yeah, but Pence has done evil things like, getting rid of Planned Parenthood facilities in Indiana.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a catch-22, but on the opposite side, Trump hasn't advocated specifically. He's let other people advocate for some of those things.
That's true. And of course, if you get rid of Trump and Pence, then you get to Paul Ryan, and he's no hero for the people.
Oh no,
he wants to burn it all down.
Yes, I almost think that he's worse than Pence would be if we had to take a comparison scale, put them both in a little bit of whiskey. Which whiskey would I drink? Well, I drink the one with Pence in it.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right. It's funny. I went to a gin tasting. Scotch tasting. You a big Scotch fan?
Oh yeah.
I can't fucking stand the shit.
What? I thought all people with money loved Scotch. You work with money all day long and you don't like Scotch?
I have taste issues. I have a lot of taste issues. And I went to the Scotch tasting, and the guy says, "What kind of Scotch do you like?" And I said, "I can't stand this stuff." And he's like, "Why are you at a Scotch tasting?" And I said, "Because I've never been to one before, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm missing out." So they give me a sample, and they give me one that they describe as peaty, right?
Okay.
Peaty, right? Mm-hmm. And for the listeners who've never had Scotch, the way I taste peaty, it is the taste that you might get. You're walking in the woods in a part of the country that's got some relatively high humidity, and a tree has fallen across the path, and it's been there for 4 or 5 years. And you reach underneath, and you kind of tickle the trunk of this tree until little bits of wood fall into your hand, basically dirt, moss, insects, whatever. You grab that handful of stuff, and you put it in your mouth. That's the taste of peaty. Right?
Oh, no. Oh,
that's what I taste, right? So, like I said, I got issues.
Do you like gin?
Oh God, no. Okay. So they give me another Scotch, and they said it's distilled on an island, and it contains the essence of the sea. And I'm like, are you fucking serious? And he's like, well, no, really. And I try it, and I swish it around, get a little oxygen in there, swallow it, and I said, you know what? That's impressive. And he goes, you like it? And I go, no, I don't like it at all. But it delivered what was promised. If you like the taste of a rotten log combined with salted fish shit, this is the Scotch for you. It really tastes like seawater. It was staggering. So yeah,
you're going to ruin Scotch for the listeners. I see Scotch as the exact opposite. Though I'll be honest, the peaty Scotch, you have to get into a higher year. Like you can't get something that's under a 10-year for me, for a peaty Scotch, because you're right, it tastes really mossy. That's the nicest way I can say it.
You're being very polite.
Yeah.
So I've got issues that now if I have to do a drink, I can do a tequila, And I can do $10 tequila or $100 tequila. I do prefer the $100 tequila, by the way. For vodka, I think you can, like Belvedere for $30, you can get a nice quality vodka. Gin, I can't do. Whiskeys, scotches, bourbons, gins. I just can't. I do like amaretto.
Ugh.
We'll consider that
it's like sugar.
Yeah. Well, I like to mix it into an orange juice or a sour mix, to kind of cut it a little bit. But and if I'm at a nice restaurant, a limoncello would be my favorite.
In fairness, I like a limoncello too, but that's definitely not Chris's drink of choice.
You're not going to sit around and drink that for a couple hours.
No, not at all. Man, now I'm gonna have to go back through, and I'm gonna have to sit down and have a whole episode just on the differences between whiskeys and scotches, and to correct all of your flavor, issues. But you're not the only one. I mean, there's like my wife, she doesn't drink scotch. She thinks that all whiskey's disgusting. She can't stand it.
Yeah. Well, I can't believe that you called scotch a type of whiskey.
A lot of people don't like to do that. I don't care what people say. It's just easier if we have to create a broad group, it's just easier that way. Yeah.
Of course, the listeners, again, the show is called The Phil Ferguson Show. If you have questions about investments, your listeners are welcome to, free of charge, email me, phil@polarisfinancialplanning.com. And if I can, just give them a quick email back to answer a question, great. If it's a little more involved and they want to set up an appointment, I'll try to schedule those in as I can. It might end up taking a few weeks to fit somebody in. But they just mentioned the show, and there'll be no charge for them. They can have an appointment and we can talk. And if I can help them out and send them on their way, that's fine, because that's part of my giving back to the community, kind of thing. So I like to be helpful.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you again so much, Phil, for joining us to talk about Bitcoin. And for anybody that's listening, all the links to his show and his website are in the description, as well as a link to buy Bitcoin directly from Phil.
I should sell Philcoin.
There we go. Philcoin. That sounds better.
Yeah.
Well, we could create like a Chris Phil hybrid. I don't know, what would it be? A Phyllis?
Well,
there we go.
I thought years ago of having created my own mutual fund and calling it the cash fund. If you put in $1 million, I'll guarantee you 5 years later you'll have $1 million. And I get to invest that money and make all the profits. Yeah, I think people might actually buy that.
Oh, you never know. So anyway, thank you again so much, Phil, for joining us. And again, all the links will be in the description.
Ciao, ciao.
You've been listening to a presentation of Cellar Door Skeptics. Check us out on Spreaker. CellarDoorSkeptics.com